The morning Caleb Vance walked out of Yuma Territorial Prison, the sky looked like old bruises, purple and yellow and sick. 20 years he'd counted stones in those walls, 20 years of dust in his throat and iron in his veins. The guards didn't shake his hand. They didn't wish him luck. They just opened the gate and stepped back, like they were releasing something that shouldn't be let loose. Vance stood there for a long moment, squinting at the world beyond the prison walls. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, shimmering in the early heat. Somewhere out there, life had moved on without him. Towns had grown. Railways had spread like spider webs across the territory. Young men had become old. Old men had died. But some things, he knew, never changed. Marshal Darius Cole waited by the wagon, his silver badge catching the morning light. 63 years old now, with a face carved by wind and conscience. He'd been 38 when he'd testified against Vance at the trial. 38 and righteously convinced that the law was the spine that held civilization together. Now at 63, he wasn't so sure about anything anymore, except that everyone deserved a second chance, even a man like Caleb Vance. 20 years, Cole said, his voice rough as gravel. Figured you'd earned your way out. Warden says you've been a model prisoner, reading books, teaching younger men to read, staying out of trouble. Vance's eyes, pale blue, almost colorless, fixed on Cole without expression. A man gets tired of fighting. That's what I thought. Cole gestured to the wagon. Town of Salvation Creek is 20 miles north. I vouched for you with the territorial governor. Got you a room at the boarding house, paid up for 2 weeks. There's work at the freight office if you want it. Honest work. A chance to be something other than what you were. What I was, Vance repeated slowly, tasting the words. And what was that, Marshal? Cole met his gaze. You know what you were. What you did. 23 separate robberies, 3 men killed. You were the devil in a dust storm, Vance. But that was 20 years ago. A man can change in 20 years. Can he? Vance's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite a sneer. Or does he just get better at pretending? The question hung in the air between them like gun smoke. Cole should have paid attention to that moment, should have heard the warning in those words. But he was tired, and he wanted to believe in redemption. Had to believe in it, really, because if men like Vance couldn't change, what was the point of any of it? What was the point of laws and prisons and second chances if some men were just born damned? Get in the wagon, Cole said. Let's get you to Salvation Creek. They rode in silence across the desert, the wagon wheels cutting through sand and scrub. The heat built slowly, the way it always did in Arizona territory, starting as a warm breath and growing into a furnace that baked the sense out of men's heads. Cole kept the horses to a steady pace, not pushing them. No point in killing good animals for the sake of speed. Vance sat perfectly still, his hands resting on his knees. He'd been given civilian clothes, rough brown trousers, a faded cotton shirt, worn boots, prison clothes for a prisoner pretending to be free. His hair had gone mostly gray, cropped close to his skull. His face was lean, almost gaunt, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth. He looked like what he was, a man who'd spent 2 decades in a cage. But his eyes were alive in a way that made Cole's instincts prickle. You got family anywhere? Cole asked, breaking the silence. Anyone you want me to wire? All dead, Vance said flatly. Ma died while I was in Yuma. Pa was already gone before that. Brother got himself shot in Tombstone in '84. Sister married a railroad man, moved back east, lost track of her. I'm sorry. Don't be. We weren't close. More silence. The desert rolled past, endless and indifferent. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals, searching for something to kill. Why'd you do it? Cole asked suddenly. Vouch for me, I mean. You put me away. Could have left me to rot. Cole considered the question. Because I've seen a lot of men in my years wearing this badge. Some are born bad, something wrong in their heads from the start. But most? Most just make bad choices and then can't find their way back. I read your file, Vance, every report, every interview, and I don't think you're bad. I think you were angry and young and stupid, and you fell in with the wrong men. 20 years is a long time to think about that. Long enough to want something different. You believe that? Really? I have to. Vance nodded slowly, his eyes distant. That's your weakness, Marshal. You need the world to make sense. Need people to fit into neat boxes, good or bad, saved or damned. But the world isn't neat. Never has been. Maybe not, Cole admitted, but a man's got to try to make it better. Otherwise, what's the point? The point? Vance smiled then, a real smile that didn't reach his eyes. The point is survival, Marshal. That's all there ever is. Survival and the will to take what you need. Cole felt ice in his gut despite the heat. You saying you haven't changed? I'm saying change is a luxury for men who have choices. Some of us only have one nature, and we wear it till we die. Then why'd you play along? Why be a model prisoner if you plan to go back to the old ways? Vance turned to look at him fully for the first time. Who says I planned anything? Maybe I just wanted to see the sky again. Maybe I wanted to taste freedom one more time before I die. Or maybe, he paused, his smile widening. Maybe I was just waiting for a fool to open the door. The words hit Cole like a fist. He pulled the wagon to a stop, his hand dropping instinctively to the revolver on his hip. You threatening me, Vance? No threat, Marshal, just truth. You opened the door because you needed to believe I'd changed, needed it more than I needed freedom. That's what makes you dangerous to yourself, your hope. It blinds you. I can put you back in that prison faster than, but you won't. Vance's voice was calm, certain. Because doing that would mean admitting you were wrong, and you can't afford to be wrong. Not at your age, not after all these years of believing the law means something. Cole's hand tightened on his gun, but he didn't draw, couldn't draw, because somewhere deep down, he knew Vance was right. This whole trip, the vouching, the second chance, the room in Salvation Creek, it was all about Cole's need to believe that justice worked, that prison reformed men instead of just warehousing them, that the system he'd served for 40 years meant something more than just violence sanctioned by a badge. Get out, Cole said quietly. What? Get out of the wagon. Walk to Salvation Creek. It'll do you good to feel the ground under your feet. Vance studied him for a moment, then climbed down without argument. He stood in the dust, looking up at Cole with those pale, measuring eyes. 20 miles north, Cole said. Follow the road. You'll see the town before sunset. Rooms at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. She's expecting you. You're making a mistake, Vance said. Not a threat, just a statement of fact. Maybe, but it's mine to make. Cole snapped the reins and the horses moved forward. He didn't look back. Didn't want to see Vance standing there in the desert, a dark figure against the bright sand. Didn't want to think about what he might have just unleashed. The town of Salvation Creek had been built on hope and held together by stubbornness. 300 souls called it home, most of them miners or ranchers, or people running from something back east. The main street featured a general store, a saloon, a church that doubled as a schoolhouse, and the Rocky Mountain Bank, a small outfit that served the local mines and kept the economy moving. Cole reached town just after noon. He stabled the horses and walked to the marshal's office, a small adobe building with bars on the windows and a wanted poster wall that was mostly empty these days. The frontier was dying. Everyone knew it. The wild days were fading into memory, replaced by telegraphs and trains and laws that actually stuck. Inside, Deputy Thomas Wade looked up from a month-old newspaper. 24 years old, fresh-faced, still believed the badge meant something pure. Cole had been that young once, had believed in the same things. Time and experience had taught him different. How'd it go? Wade asked, folding the paper. Released him, Cole said, hanging his hat on the peg. Gave him the talk, pointed him toward Henderson's place. Think he'll stay straight? Cole poured himself a cup of coffee from the pot on the stove. It was thick and bitter and exactly what he needed. I think he'll do whatever suits him. We just have to hope what suits him is a quiet life. You don't sound convinced. I'm never convinced, Tom. I'm just doing the job. The job. 40 years of the job. 40 years of chasing bad men across bad country, delivering justice with a gun and a rope. He'd killed 11 men in the line of duty, arrested hundreds more, testified at more trials than he could count. And what had it gotten him? A bum knee, a weak heart, and the growing suspicion that most of what he'd done hadn't mattered at all. You look tired, Wade observed. I am tired. Tired enough that I'm thinking about the ranch. Sir? Cole sat down at his desk, the chair creaking under his weight. Got 30 acres outside town. Good water, decent grazing. Brother left it to me when he died. Been thinking I should retire there, raise a few horses, let someone younger wear this badge. You're not that old. 63 isn't young, Tom, and every morning I wake up wondering if this is the day my heart gives out or my knee gives way at the wrong moment. The frontier's changing. Doesn't need old men like me anymore. Wade started to respond, but the door burst open, cutting him off. Jacob Ross, the young clerk from the Rocky Mountain Bank, stood in the doorway, his face pale and terrified. Marshal, the bank! They hit the bank! Cole was on his feet instantly, pain shooting through his knee. Who hit it? When? Just now, maybe 10 minutes ago. 3 men with masks and guns. They took everything, all the cash, the gold shipment from the Lucky Chance mine. Shot Mister. Brennan, when he tried to stop them. Brennan dead? I don't know. Doc Summers is with him now. Marshal, they rode south, toward the desert. Cole grabbed his hat and gun belt, his mind already working through possibilities. Bank robberies were rare these days. Most outlaws had either been killed, imprisoned, or given up the life. This was either desperate amateurs or professionals who'd been laying low. Tom, get the horses. Jacob, go back to the bank and keep everyone calm. Tell Doc Summers I'll check on Brennan soon as I can. Move! They scattered. Cole strapped on his gun belt, checking the loads in his Colt 45 by habit. 6 rounds. 6 chances to stop whatever was happening before it got worse. His hands were steady. They were always steady when it mattered. That was the one gift age hadn't stolen yet. He was halfway to the stable when the thought hit him like a train. South toward the desert. The same direction Vance was walking. No, couldn't be. The man had just gotten out, had just walked free. Why would he risk everything for one bank job after 20 years inside? Unless that was the plan all along. Unless Cole had been played from the very beginning. Son of a... Cole's curse was lost in the sound of horses being led out of the stable. Wade had 2 mounts ready, both saddled and anxious. Good kid, fast learner. Reminded Cole of himself 40 years ago. They rode hard toward the desert, following the obvious trail. 3 horses, moving fast but not panicked. Professional work. These weren't amateurs spooked by their own success. These were men who knew what they were doing. The trail led south for 3 miles, then curved west toward a rocky outcropping that provided cover from the main road. Cole slowed his horse as they approached, his instincts screaming. This was a perfect ambush spot. If the robbers had any sense, they'd have someone watching their back trail. Tom, he said quietly, easy now. Could be a trap. They approached the rocks carefully, weapons drawn. The desert was silent except for the wind and the creak of saddle leather. No birds, no movement, just heat and sand and... Marshal, over here! Wade had found them. 3 horses, still saddled, tied to a scraggly mesquite tree. Their saddlebags were empty. No sign of the riders. They switched mounts, Cole said, scanning the area. Sure enough, there were fresh tracks leading northwest. Different horses, different direction. Smart. Very smart. These weren't ordinary bank robbers. Why leave the horses? Wade asked. Why not just ride them? Because fresh horses are faster. They had this planned. Probably had mounts stashed here days ago. Cole dismounted and examined the area more carefully. The tracks told a story. 3 men had waited here, probably since before dawn. They'd had water and food. One had smoked cigarettes. Cole found 3 butts ground into the dirt. Another had paced. His boot prints circled the same small area repeatedly. Men waiting for something or someone. Marshal? Wade's voice was tight. You need to see this. The deputy stood near the rocks, looking down at something on the ground. Cole walked over, his bad knee protesting every step. It was a scrap of cloth, prison-issue cotton, faded from years of washing. And near it, pressed into the dust, was a clear boot print. Size 11, worn heel on the left side. The same boots Cole had seen on Caleb Vance that morning. God damn it, Cole whispered. God damn it to hell. Sir? Cole looked at his deputy, seeing the confusion and concern in the young man's face. How could he explain this? How could he admit that he'd been so desperate to believe in redemption that he'd set a wolf free among sheep? It's Vance, he said finally. The man I released this morning, he didn't walk to Salvation Creek. He came straight here and met up with his old crew. This whole thing, the Model Prisoner Act, the good behavior, it was all a setup. They waited 20 years for him to get out, and the moment he did, they hit the bank. But you vouched for him. You said, "I know what I said." Cole's voice came out harsher than he intended. He took a breath, forcing calm. "I was wrong." I wanted to believe he'd changed, and he used that against me, used my hope like a weapon. Wade looked sick. "What do we do?" Cole stared northwest, where the tracks disappeared into the vast emptiness. 4 men with fresh horses, stolen gold, and a 20-year head start on planning their escape. By the time he could get a posse together, they'd be gone. Vanished into the territories where law was a suggestion and justice came from whoever was fastest with a gun. He should go back, should organize a proper pursuit, should wire the territorial marshal and the army and every lawman within 100 miles. That was the smart play, the safe play. But it was also slow, and slow meant Vance would disappear like smoke. "We follow," Cole said. "Just us, right now." "Marshal, that's crazy. It's 4 against 2. We should—" "By the time we get help, they'll be in Mexico or the territories are scattered to hell and gone. This is our only chance." "But, Tom," Cole met the younger man's eyes. "This is my fault. I let him out. I believed his lies. That makes this my responsibility to fix. Now, are you with me or not?" Wade hesitated, but only for a moment. "I'm with you, sir." "Good. Check your ammunition. Fill your canteen. We ride in 5 minutes." As Wade moved to prepare, Cole stood alone in the desert, feeling every one of his 63 years. This was foolish, reckless, exactly the kind of impulsive decision he'd counseled against 100 times over his career. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes a man had to put aside wisdom and do what was right, even if it killed him. And hunting Caleb Vance across the desert with a green deputy and a bad knee was probably going to kill him. But he'd be damned if he'd let Vance make a fool of him without a fight. They rode northwest as the sun climbed higher, following tracks that were almost too easy to read. That worried Cole. Professional outlaws didn't leave obvious trails unless they wanted to be followed, unless they were leading pursuers into something worse than an ambush. "How well did you know him?" Wade asked after an hour of silence. "Vance, I mean. Before." Cole considered the question. "Well enough. I was the one who finally caught him, back in '76. He'd been running wild for 2 years, robbing stages, banks, trains, always one step ahead, smart as hell and twice as mean. But he made a mistake in Tucson. Got drunk, got careless, got caught." "What kind of mistake?" "Woman." Cole smiled grimly. "It's always a woman or money. In his case, both. He was seeing a saloon girl spending gold too freely. I heard about it, set up a watch, waited him out. He came to visit her one night, and we took him without firing a shot." "He fight?" "Not a bit. Just smiled and put his hands up. Said he was tired of running. Said it would almost be a relief to stop." Cole shook his head. "I should have known then. A man like Vance doesn't give up, doesn't get tired. He just regroups, plans, waits for the right moment. And we gave him that moment." "Yeah, we did." The tracks led them through increasingly rough country, canyons and arroyos and stretches of naked rock where the trail disappeared for long stretches. But Vance and his crew weren't trying too hard to hide. They were moving fast, confident in their lead. Probably figured no pursuit would start for hours, maybe days. They were wrong. But that didn't mean Cole was right to chase them. Around mid-afternoon, the tracks split. 3 horses continued northwest. One branched off, heading due west toward a line of mountains. "Which way?" Wade asked. Cole studied the diverging trails. The solo horse carried less weight, probably just rider and gear. The 3 horses were heavier, weighed down with stolen gold. "They split up," Cole said. "Probably plan to meet up later, somewhere safer. One man draws off pursuit while the others get away clean." "So which do we follow?" Cole's instinct said to follow the gold. That's where Vance would be, with the prize, not serving as a decoy. But instinct had been wrong before. This morning, for instance. "We follow the single rider," Cole decided. "Something tells me Vance wouldn't trust anyone else with the gold. He'd be the decoy. That seems backwards, I know. But Vance thinks differently than normal men. He'd figure I'd chase the gold, so he'd make himself the bait. Arrogant bastard probably wants me to find him. They turned west, following the lone trail into the mountains. The afternoon heat was brutal, shimmering off the rocks in waves that made the horizon dance. Cole's knee throbbed with each step his horse took. His canteen was half empty. Beside him, Wade looked fresh but nervous, his hand never far from his gun. The trail led them into a narrow canyon, steep walls rising on either side. Bad terrain. Perfect for an ambush. Cole slowed his horse to a walk, every instinct screaming danger. "Marshal," Wade whispered, "this feels wrong." "It is wrong. But we're committed now." They continued deeper into the canyon, the walls closing in. Shadows stretched long and dark. The temperature dropped a few merciful degrees. Cole's horse snorted nervously, sensing something ahead. Then he saw it. A camp. Simple setup, just a bedroll and the remains of a fire. And sitting on a rock, calm as Sunday morning, was Caleb Vance. "Afternoon, Marshal," Vance called out, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Been expecting you. You're faster than I thought. Figured you'd waste time organizing a posse." Cole reined his horse to a stop 50 feet away, his hand on his gun. "Where's the gold, Vance?" "Safe. Far from here. My boys are taking it somewhere you'll never find it." "Your boys. So you had this plan from the beginning. The Model Prisoner Act was exactly that, an act." Vance stood, his movements easy and relaxed. No gun in sight. 20 years is a long time to plan, Marshal. Long time to think about every detail, every contingency, every weak point in your defenses. "I'm not defenses. I'm a man who made a mistake." "Oh, you're more than that. You're the symbol of everything that put me in that cage. The law, justice, the righteous belief that society's rules matter. You put me away 20 years ago because you believed in those things. And I let you take me because I knew, even then, that someday you'd be the one to let me out." Cole felt cold despite the heat. "You planned this 20 years ago?" "Not the specifics, but the general shape, yes. I knew that if I played the game long enough, if I was patient enough, someone like you would come along. Someone who needed to believe people could change, who needed redemption to be real, and I'd use that need like a crowbar to pry myself free." "You're insane." "I'm practical." Vance spread his hands. "Look around, Marshal. The frontier's dying. Men like us were relics, dinosaurs waiting for the tar pit. This job? This was about going out on our terms. One last score, one last reminder that we existed, that we mattered. 3 men died in that bank. One man, Brennan. And he's not dead, just wounded. We're not murderers, Marshal. Never have been. We take money, not lives." "You killed 3 men during your robberies." "Self-defense. They drew first. But that's not why you're here." Vance's smile widened. "You're here because I made you look like a fool. Because I used your hope against you. That's what really burns, isn't it? Not the robbery, not the wounded banker, but the fact that you were wrong. That redemption failed." Cole dismounted slowly, his knees screaming. Wade started to follow, but Cole held up a hand. "Stay mounted, Tom. Cover the canyon. Sir, this is an order. Do it." Wade reluctantly stayed in the saddle, his rifle across his lap. Cole walked forward, each step deliberate. Vance didn't move, didn't reach for a weapon, just stood there, waiting. "Where's your gun?" Cole asked when they were 10 feet apart. "Don't have one. Didn't think I'd need it." "You're unarmed." "Completely." Cole drew his Colt, aiming at Vance's chest. His hand was steady, his resolve was not. "I could shoot you right now, claim you went for a weapon." "You could," Vance agreed, "but you won't, because you're not that kind of lawman. You need things clean, legal. You need to bring me in alive so you can prove the system works, prove that justice means something. The system doesn't work if men like you can manipulate it. Then maybe the system's the problem, not men like me." They stood there in the dying light, 2 old men arguing about philosophy while the frontier collapsed around them. Cole wanted to pull the trigger, wanted to end this cleanly, here and now, but Vance was right. He couldn't, wouldn't, because killing an unarmed man, Even an outlaw would make him no better than the criminals he'd spent 40 years chasing. "Turn around," Cole said finally, "hands behind your back." "Arresting me? What did you think would happen?" Vance's smile faded. "I thought you might see the truth. That we're the same, you and me, both trying to impose meaning on a meaningless world, both clinging to codes that nobody else follows anymore. The only difference is I'm honest about it. We're nothing alike. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe someday you'll believe it." Cole holstered his gun and pulled out iron shackles from his saddlebag. As he approached to cuff Vance, the outlaw spoke again, his voice quiet. "The gold's already spent, Marshal. My boys have a buyer waiting. By the time you get me back to Salvation Creek, they'll be gone. Scattered. You'll never find them." "That's their problem. You're mine." "And what will you tell people? That you were played? That the great Darius Cole, legendary lawman, was made a fool by a convict?" "I'll tell them the truth. That I made a mistake. That's what honest men do. They admit their failures." "Honest men," Vance laughed. "That's your problem right there. You think honesty matters. But nobody cares about truth anymore, Marshal. They care about stories, legends, and the story that's going to spread is simple. Marshal Cole let Caleb Vance go, and Vance robbed a bank before sunset. You'll be a punchline, a cautionary tale about soft-hearted old lawmen who should have retired years ago." The words hit harder than any bullet. Because Vance was right. The story would spread, twisted, simplified, turned into exactly the kind of legend Cole had spent his life fighting against. He snapped the cuffs on Vance's wrists anyway. "Tom," he called, "we're riding back. We've got our man." "What about the gold? The others?" "Wire the territorial marshal when we get back. This is bigger than us now." They started the long ride back to Salvation Creek as the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of blood and fire. Vance rode in silence, his hands cuffed behind him, his face unreadable. Cole's mind churned with everything that had happened, everything that had gone wrong. He'd wanted to believe in redemption, needed to believe that the system worked, that justice meant something more than just violence sanctioned by a badge. And that need had been weaponized against him by a man who understood human weakness better than most people understood their own strengths. But the worst part, the part that kept gnawing at Cole's gut, was the suspicion that Vance wasn't entirely wrong. The frontier was dying. The old ways were fading, and men like them, whether lawman or outlaw, were becoming irrelevant. The world was moving on, and they were being left behind like fossils in stone. They made camp as full dark fell, building a small fire and rationing their water. Wade tied Vance to a tree, then settled in to take first watch. Cole lay on his bedroll, staring up at stars that seemed impossibly distant and cold. "Marshal?" Vance's voice cut through the darkness. "Can I ask you something?" "No." "Why'd you really vouch for me? And don't give me that speech about second chances. What was the real reason?" Cole didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I wanted to believe I'd done something that mattered. That all those years chasing men like you had purpose. That I'd helped make the world better, not just cleaner. And if you could change, if prison could reform instead of just punish, then everything I'd done meant something. So it was about you, not me." "Yeah, it was about me." Vance was quiet for a moment. Then, "I respect that. Most men won't admit what they really want. But Marshal, the world doesn't care what we want it to mean. It just is. And we just are. The sooner you accept that, the easier everything gets. If I accepted that, I'd eat my gun. Then maybe you should." Cole rolled over, turning his back on the outlaw. No more talking, no more philosophy. Tomorrow they'd reach Salvation Creek, and he'd lock Vance in a cell, and that would be the end of it. Except he knew it wouldn't be. Vance was right about one thing. The story would spread, and in that story, Cole would be the fool who'd been played, the aging lawman who'd been too soft, too weak, too desperate for meaning in a meaningless world. He was still thinking about that when sleep finally took him. And when he woke 3 hours later to find Wade unconscious and Vance gone, his first thought wasn't anger or fear. It was resignation. Because of course Vance had escaped. Of course he had. That was how the story had to end. The outlaw winning, the lawman humiliated. It was the only ending that made sense, the only ending the universe would allow. Wade's blood had dried dark against the rock where Vance had smashed his head. Not dead. Cole checked that first, feeling for a pulse and finding one, weak but steady. The kid would have a hell of a headache and a scar to remember his first real manhunt, but he'd live. Small mercies in a night full of disasters. The shackles lay open on the ground, picked clean. Cole examined them in the pale moonlight, seeing the scratches around the lock mechanism. Vance had used something thin and strong, probably a wire he'd hidden in his boot heel or sewn into his clothes. 20 years to plan meant 20 years to prepare. Every detail thought through, every contingency covered. Cole should have searched him more thoroughly, should have stripped him down and checked every seam, every fold. But he'd been tired and angry and foolish enough to think iron alone could hold a man who'd spent 2 decades thinking about nothing but freedom. He built up the fire and made Wade as comfortable as possible, then sat watching the flames and considering his options. Dawn was still 3 hours away. Vance had maybe a 2-hour head start, and he was on foot. They'd hobbled all the horses to prevent exactly this kind of escape. But 2 hours in the dark desert was enough to disappear if you knew the country. And Vance had grown up in Arizona territory. He knew every canyon and waterhole between here and Mexico. The smart move was to wait for dawn, get Wade conscious, and ride back to Salvation Creek for help. Put out wires, organize a proper manhunt, let younger men with fresh legs do the tracking. Cole was 63 years old with a bad knee and a heart that skipped beats when he pushed too hard. This wasn't his fight anymore. Except it was. It had been his fight from the moment he'd stood before the territorial governor and vouched for Caleb Vance's character. His signature on that release form. His word that had opened the prison gates. His pride that had blinded him to what should have been obvious. And now his responsibility to fix it, whatever the cost. Wade groaned, his eyes fluttering open. Marshal? Easy. You took a bad knock. How many fingers am I holding up? 3. No. 4. Everything's blurry. That's normal. Can you sit up? Wade managed it with help, then immediately vomited into the sand. Cole waited until the spasms passed before offering water. The kid sipped carefully, his face pale in the firelight. He got away. I'm sorry, sir. I was watching, I swear. He asked for water, and when I got close, don't apologize. He's done this before. Probably escaped from better men than us. What do we do now? Cole handed him the canteen again. You rest. At first light, you ride back to Salvation Creek. Tell Sheriff Morgan what happened. Have him wire every lawman within 200 miles. I'm going after Vance. Alone? Marshal, that's necessary. He's on foot. I'm on horseback. I can catch him if I move now. But you're neat. We'll hold or it won't. Either way, this is my mess to clean up. Wade tried to stand but swayed dangerously. Cole pushed him back down. You're in no condition to ride anywhere tonight. Rest. That's an order. Sir, you can't. I can and I will. Now stop arguing and conserve your strength. You'll need it for the ride back. Cole checked his supplies, ammunition, water, jerky, matches. Enough for 3 days if he was careful. Hopefully it wouldn't take that long. He saddled his horse, a sturdy roan mare named Patience, who'd carried him through worse situations than this. She snorted disapproval at the night ride, but didn't fight him. Marshal? Wade's voice was small, frightened. What if you don't come back? Then you tell folks I died doing my job. That's all any man can ask. He rode out before Wade could respond, following the tracks that Vance had made no effort to hide, heading northwest again, back toward where the gold had gone. Of course. The whole capture, the philosophical conversation, the easy surrender, it had all been another layer of deception. Vance had never intended to be taken back to Salvation Creek. He'd planned the escape from the beginning, using the camp as a rendezvous point, which meant his crew was probably waiting for him, which meant Cole was riding straight into an ambush with no backup and no plan except stubborn refusal to quit. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to turn back. The rest of him kept riding. The desert at night was a different world, cold instead of hot, alive with sounds that the day heat silenced. Coyotes sang in the distance. Owls hunted on silent wings. Something small and quick rustled through brush near the trail. The stars blazed overhead, so bright and numerous they seemed to press down like a weight. Cole had spent 40 years in this country and never gotten used to how big the night sky felt out here, how small it made a man seem. Back east, he'd heard, you couldn't see half these stars, too many city lights, too much smoke and dust. But out here, the universe reminded you every night that you were nothing. A speck. A momentary arrangement of meat and bone that would return to dust and be forgotten. Cheerful thoughts for a manhunt. The trail led through a series of dry washes and across a stretch of alkali flat that glowed ghostly white in the moonlight. Vance's boot prints were clear in the soft earth, joined eventually by horse tracks, 3 of them, just as Cole had expected. The crew had been waiting. Now they were all together again, mounted and moving fast. 4 men, 4 horses, and stolen gold against 1 aging marshal on a tired mare. The odds had been better in his youth. Hell, the odds had been better this morning. Dawn came slowly, bleeding color back into the world. Cole stopped to rest patience and refill his canteen from a spring he'd known about for 30 years. A tiny seep in the rocks that never quite dried up even in the worst summers. The water was cold and slightly metallic, but it was wet, and that's what mattered. He chewed jerky and considered his position. Following the trail was easy. They weren't trying to hide anymore. But following wasn't the same as catching. They were moving faster than him, and they had a destination in mind. He was just reacting, always 1 step behind. He needed to get ahead of them somehow. Needed to think like Vance thought, anticipate where they were going instead of just chasing where they'd been. The tracks led northwest, which meant they were probably heading for the old mining country. Abandoned claims and ghost towns left over from the silver boom that had gone bust 15 years back. Good country for outlaws. Lots of places to hide, lots of places to stash gold until things cooled down. And beyond that, the territories in Mexico and all the lawless spaces where a man could disappear forever. But Vance wasn't just running. He'd said as much last night. This wasn't about escape, it was about legacy. About proving he still mattered. About going out on his terms with 1 last perfect score. Which meant he wasn't heading for Mexico. Not yet. He was heading for something else. Something bigger. Cole pulled out his map, a battered piece of oilcloth covered in pencil marks and corrections. The mining country was marked in faded notation. Town names, water sources, major trails. Most of it was memory now. He'd worked this territory in his younger days, chasing claim jumpers and road agents. His finger traced northwest, following the logical route. Past the ghost town of Silverado, past the played-out Lucky Strike mine. Past... His finger stopped. The railroad. The Southern Pacific line that cut through the territory on its way to California. It passed through this area twice a week, carrying payroll for the mines that were still working, supplies for the towns, occasionally gold shipments from the refineries. Son of a bitch, Cole whispered. Vance wasn't running. He was setting up for another job. The bank robbery had just been seed money, a way to finance and supply the real score. The old outlaw wasn't content with 1 last bank. He wanted 1 last train. And if Cole was right about the timing, the next westbound train was due through in 2 days. At a place called Devil's Bend, where the tracks curved around a river gorge and trains had to slow to a crawl. Perfect place for a robbery. Vance had hit trains there before, back in his prime. Had probably memorized every detail of the terrain, every approach and escape route. It was his signature move, his masterpiece. And he was going to do it 1 more time. Cole remounted and changed direction, no longer following the tracks but cutting across country toward Devil's Bend. If he was wrong, he'd lose them completely. But if he was right, he could get there first. Set up his own ambush. Maybe even the odds a little. His knee throbbed with each step Patience took. His heart hammered harder than it should. 63 years old and riding hell-bent across the desert to stop a train robbery. If he survived this, he was definitely retiring. The country grew rougher as he rode. More rock than sand, more vertical than horizontal. This was where the desert met the mountains, all broken stone and sudden drop-offs. Beautiful in a harsh way, like everything in Arizona. Beautiful and deadly. He stopped once at a trading post run by a Navajo family, traded silver for information. Yes, they'd seen 4 riders pass through yesterday. Bought supplies, didn't talk much. Headed northwest toward the old silver country. The eldest son thought one of them looked familiar. A white man, older, with pale eyes that made you want to look away. Vance, still moving toward Devil's Bend right where Cole expected. The son also mentioned something else. There are others on the trail, young men, maybe 6 or 7 of them. Came through this morning asking about the 4 riders, said they were bounty hunters. Bounty hunters? Cole's gut tightened. What did they look like? Young, white, well-armed. The leader had a scar across his throat. He showed me a wanted poster for Caleb Vance, $5,000 reward. 5,000. Someone had put serious money on Vance's head, and a scar-throated bounty hunter with 6 men wasn't interested in taking prisoners. They'd kill Vance and anyone with him, claim the reward, and probably keep the stolen gold for themselves. The situation had just gotten considerably more complicated. Cole thanked the trader and rode on, pushing patience harder than he should. The math was simple now. 4 outlaws heading for Devil's Bend. 7 bounty hunters chasing them. 1 marshal trying to bring order to chaos. And somewhere in the middle, innocent people on a train who had no idea they were about to ride into a war zone. The sun climbed toward noon, turning the air into a furnace. Cole's canteen ran dry. His knee felt like someone was driving nails through it. Patience's pace slowed despite his urging. They were both too old for this. Too tired. Too worn down by years and miles and disappointment. But they kept going because that's what you did. You kept going until you couldn't anymore, and then you went a little further. By late afternoon, he reached the high ground overlooking Devil's Bend. The river gorge cut deep into the red rock, and the railroad tracks curved along its edge like a scar. The terrain was exactly as he remembered. Steep approaches, limited cover, the tracks exposed for a quarter-mile before and after the bend, and camped in a box canyon below, 4 horses and 4 men. Cole dismounted and crawled to the edge of the overlook, pulling out his field glasses. The distance was significant, but the optics were good. He could make out faces and details. Vance sat near a small fire, cleaning a rifle that looked new. Expensive. Probably bought with the bank money. Beside him, a heavy-set man with a gray beard worked on a second rifle. That would be Marcus Webb, if Cole's memory was correct. Vance's lieutenant from the old days. Explosives expert. Did 5 years in Yuma for blowing up a safe and spent the rest of his sentence learning patience. The other 2 were younger, maybe 40, maybe less. One, tall and lean, the other built like a brick wall. The tall one paced constantly, nervous energy radiating off him. The brick wall sat motionless, sharpening a knife with steady mechanical precision. 4 men preparing for a train robbery. 4 men who thought they were about to pull off the perfect crime and ride into legend. They had no idea 7 killers were hunting them. And they had no idea a stubborn old marshal was watching from above, trying to figure out how to stop all of them without getting anyone killed. The smart move was to wait for the bounty hunters to arrive and let them do the work. 7 guns against 4. The outlaws would lose. Problem solved without Cole firing a shot. Except the bounty hunters wouldn't just stop at Vance. They'd kill all 4 men, take the gold, and vanish. No trial. No justice. Just execution and theft sanctioned by a reward poster. And the train. The bounty hunters wouldn't care about innocent passengers. If the train arrived during the fight, people would die. Women and children and working men just trying to get from one place to another. Cole couldn't let that happen, which meant he needed to arrest Vance and his crew before the bounty hunters arrived. 4 armed men preparing for a robbery. 1 aging marshal with a bad knee and 6 bullets. The mathematics of the situation were not encouraging. He settled in to watch and plan, the sun burning down on his neck. There had to be a way. Had to be some angle he wasn't seeing. 40 years as a lawman should have taught him something useful for this exact situation. But 40 years as a lawman had mainly taught him that sometimes there were no good options. Sometimes you just picked the least bad choice and hoped you survived it. As evening fell, Vance stood and stretched, looking around the canyon. For a moment, Cole could swear the outlaw looked directly at his hiding spot. Could swear those pale eyes met his across 300 yards of empty air. Then Vance smiled and went back to his fire. He knows, Cole realized. Somehow, he knows I'm here. The realization should have frightened him. Instead, it felt almost like relief. No more pretending, no more games. Just 2 old men who understood each other perfectly, preparing for one final confrontation. Cole pulled back from the edge and returned to where Patience was hobbled. He needed a plan. Something better than riding down there and demanding surrender. Something smarter than waiting for the bounty hunters to turn this into a massacre. He sat with his back against a rock, thinking through scenarios and discarding them one after another. Sneak in at night? They'd hear him coming. Wait until they were focused on the train. Innocent people would be in the crossfire. Try to warn the railroad? The train was already en route, no way to stop it in time. Every option led to death. His, theirs, or worst of all, the passengers who didn't deserve to be caught in this mess. "What would you do?" he asked the empty air, speaking to himself. To the young marshal he'd been 40 years ago. To the idealistic fool who'd believed justice could be clean and simple. That younger version wouldn't have been in this situation. That younger version would have shot Vance on sight instead of believing in redemption. Would have tracked down the whole gang and brought them in or put them down without hesitation or doubt. But that younger version had also been wrong about a lot of things. Had believed the world was simple, good guys and bad guys, right and wrong, justice and crime. Age had taught him that nothing was simple, that good men did terrible things and bad men sometimes showed mercy, that justice was a word people used to justify whatever they wanted to do. And yet he was still here, wasn't he? Still wearing the badge, still trying to stop bad men from hurting innocent people, still believing, despite everything, that the law meant something more than just organized violence. Maybe that made him a fool, or maybe it made him the only kind of lawman worth being. He was still thinking about that when he heard horses approaching from the south. Multiple horses, moving fast but not recklessly. Men who knew how to travel quietly when they needed to. The bounty hunters. Cole crept back to the overlook and watched as 7 riders appeared in the gathering dusk, following the same trail he'd used. They moved with military precision, spread out in a loose formation, rifles ready. The leader rode in front, a man in his 30s with a distinctive scar across his throat that showed white against weathered skin. They stopped at the same overlook Cole had used, surveying the canyon below. The scarred man produced field glasses and studied Vance's camp carefully, then spoke quietly to his men. Cole couldn't hear the words, but he could guess their meaning. 4 targets. Make it quick. No witnesses. Then the scarred man did something unexpected. He turned and looked directly at Cole's hiding spot among the rocks. "You planning to join us, Marshal? Or just watch?" Cole's blood turned to ice. How had they known? How had they spotted him? "Saw your horse," the scarred man continued, still not looking directly at Cole but clearly speaking to him. "Mare with a distinctive white sock on her left foreleg. Tracks coming up here. Figured you were either dead or hiding. Since I don't smell decomposition, must be the latter." No point in hiding now. Cole stood up, his hand near his gun. "Marcus Reed, heard you were working Colorado." "Marshal Cole, heard you were getting soft, vouching for outlaws who robbed banks 8 hours after release." Reed smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Guess we both heard, right? This is law business. Take your men and ride out. Law business with a $5,000 bounty makes it my business too. But I'm a reasonable man. I'll give you a choice. Ride with us, help take Vance down, split the reward 7 ways. Or ride away and let us do what you clearly can't. There's a train coming through tomorrow. Passengers who don't deserve to die in crossfire. Then we hit Vance tonight, before he can set up his ambush. Clean, quiet, profitable." Cole shook his head. "I'm bringing them in alive, for trial. 4 armed men who've already robbed 1 bank and wounded a civilian? You think a judge will care if they get shot resisting arrest?" Reed's voice was reasonable, almost kind. "Marshal, I respect what you're trying to do, really. But this isn't the old frontier. The law isn't about courts and juries anymore. It's about money and efficiency. That badge you wear? It's just decoration now. What matters is who can deliver results." "Results?" Cole tasted the word like poison. "You mean bodies." "I mean justice. Same thing you mean. We just get there different ways. Justice means trial, means letting people defend themselves, means men like Vance spend 20 years planning their next crime while eating food paid for by taxpayers. Your way failed, Marshal. Time to step aside and let men with stronger stomachs finish the job." The other 6 bounty hunters had dismounted and spread out, forming a loose semicircle. Not threatening yet, but clearly ready to become threatening if Cole didn't cooperate. 7 guns against 1. Even if he was fast enough to drop Reed, the others would cut him down before he could get a second shot. "Last chance," Reed said. Ride with us or ride away, but don't try to stop us. That would be suicide, and you're too old and too smart for suicide. Cole's hand stayed near his gun. His knee throbbed. His heart hammered. 63 years old and facing down 7 killers while trying to protect 4 outlaws who didn't deserve protection. The situation was insane. He was insane for even considering. No, he said simply. Reed's expression didn't change. No to which option? Both. I'm not riding with you. I'm not riding away. I'm arresting Caleb Vance and his crew for bank robbery. You want to collect a reward, you can testify at the trial. That's suicide. Then I guess I'm stupider than you thought. For a long moment, nobody moved. 7 bounty hunters. 1 marshal. The math was simple and brutal. Reed could give the order right now and this would all be over. Cole's body would be left in the rocks. Another casualty of the dying frontier. Nobody would even question it. Old Lawman got in the way, paid the price, sad but predictable. But Reed didn't give the order. Instead, he smiled again, that empty expression that wasn't quite contempt and wasn't quite respect. You got sand, old man. I'll give you that. Tell you what, we'll wait until after you make your move. Let you try your way first. When it fails and you're bleeding out in that canyon, we'll finish the job. Fair enough? Why? Because shooting lawmen is bad for business, but watching them fail. Reed's smile widened. That's just entertainment. Plus, you'll make good cover while we set up our own positions. Vance will be focused on you, won't see us coming. Cole realized he was being used. Reed didn't care about giving him a chance. He was just using Cole as bait, a distraction while the bounty hunters positioned themselves for the kill. He should refuse. Should tell Reed to go to hell. Should at least die with dignity instead of being manipulated one more time. But if he refused, Reed would just shoot him now and proceed with the plan anyway. At least this way, he'd have a chance to warn Vance. Maybe convince him to surrender. Maybe prevent the massacre that was coming. Not a good option, but the only option. Fine, Cole said. I go down at first light. You stay back and let me try to talk them in. Scout's honor. Reed's voice was heavy with mockery. We'll be good little bounty hunters and wait for your signal. And when you're dead and Vance is shooting at your corpse, we'll end this quick and collect our money. You're a real humanitarian. I'm a realist. Big difference. The bounty hunters pulled back and made camp on the far side of the overlook, positioning themselves where they could watch both Cole and the canyon below. Cole returned to his spot near Patience, checking his guns and trying not to think about how thoroughly he'd lost control of this situation. Tomorrow at dawn, he'd ride into that canyon. He'd try one more time to convince Caleb Vance to surrender. And when Vance inevitably refused, 7 professional killers would open fire and turn Devil's Bend into an abattoir, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. Unless Vance was willing to listen. Unless 20 years in prison had actually taught him something about survival versus pride. Unless there was still some part of the outlaw that remembered what it felt like to be human instead of legendary. Cole wasn't optimistic, but optimism was all he had left. He cleaned his guns, checked his ammunition, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow was going to be ugly. Tomorrow, one way or another, was going to be the end. Dawn came without mercy, painting the canyon walls the color of dried blood. Cole's knee had stiffened during the night, and when he tried to stand, pain shot through the joint like lightning. He gritted his teeth and forced himself upright, using a rock for support. 63 years of hard living had left their marks, and this morning, every single one of them screamed for attention. Behind him, Reed and his men were already awake and positioned, their rifles trained on the canyon below. They'd moved during the night like ghosts, spreading out across the ridgeline to create a killing field. Professional work, military precision. These weren't bounty hunters scraping for reward money. They were executioners who'd found a legal way to kill for profit. Clock's ticking, Marshal, Reed called softly. Sun's up. Time to earn that badge. Cole didn't respond. He saddled Patience, his hands moving through the familiar motions while his mind raced through scenarios. Ride down. Try to talk sense into Vance, probably get shot. Definitely trigger the bounty hunters to open fire. People die. The end. Not much of a plan. But 40 years as a lawman had taught him that sometimes you just had to walk into the fire and hope you came out the other side. He mounted Patience and started down the canyon trail, his right hand resting on his Colt. The path was steep and treacherous, littered with loose rock that clattered beneath the mare's hooves. No element of surprise here. Vance would hear him coming a mile away, which was probably the point. This wasn't an ambush. It was a meeting that both men knew was inevitable. Halfway down, Cole saw movement near the campfire. Vance stood up slowly, stretching like a man who'd slept well and woken refreshed. The other three scrambled for their weapons, but Vance raised a hand, stopping them. He said something Cole couldn't hear, and the men relaxed slightly, though their hands stayed near their guns. Cole reached the canyon floor and rode toward the camp at a walk. 50 yards. 40. 30. Close enough to see faces, read expressions, count the weapons. 4 rifles, at least 4 pistols. The odds hadn't improved overnight. "Morning, Marshal," Vance called out, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." Cole reined patience to a stop 20 feet from the fire. "I'm not here for coffee." "No, I suppose you're not." Vance poured himself a cup from the pot, his movements casual and unhurried. "You're here to arrest me. Again. 3rd time in 2 days, starting to feel like a habit. You escaped custody, assaulted a deputy. That makes this a whole different situation. Deputy's fine, by the way. Checked on him this morning before we left. Kid's got a hard head. He'll heal." Vance sipped his coffee, watching Cole over the rim. "You, on the other hand, look like hell. Rough night?" "Rough couple of days, thanks to you." "Thanks to me?" Vance laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "Marshal, I'm just living my life. You're the one who decided to make it complicated. Could have let me go. Could have accepted that some men can't be caged twice. But no, you had to follow, had to prove something. To yourself, to me, to the world. So here we are." The 3 other men had fanned out slightly, creating a triangle with Vance at the point. Good tactical positioning. They'd been in firefights before, knew how to create crossfire angles. The gray-bearded one, Marcus Webb, kept his hand on his rifle but didn't raise it, waiting for Vance's signal. "You're planning to rob the westbound train," Cole said, stating fact rather than asking. "Tomorrow, when it slows for the bend. Same spot you hit 23 years ago." Vance's smile widened. "You always were sharp. That's what made you dangerous back in the day. Most lawmen just followed orders. You actually thought. So I'm right. About the train? Maybe. About the timing? Close enough. About stopping us?" Vance shook his head. "Not a chance, Marshal. This is happening. We've planned it too long, invested too much. This is our masterpiece. The job that will be talked about for the next 100 years. 4 old men against the railroad companies and the banks and the whole dying frontier. One last perfect crime before we fade away. It's not perfect if I'm standing here." "Aren't you, though?" Vance gestured at the canyon walls. "Standing here, I mean, all alone. No backup, no posse. Just one tired old man with a badge and a dream." He paused, his pale eyes studying Cole intently. "Or are you alone, Marshal? Something tells me there's more to this situation than what I can see." Cole's blood went cold. Vance knew. Somehow, impossibly, he knew about Reed and the bounty hunters. "I see it in your face," Vance continued, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "That look of a man caught between bad choices. You came down here knowing something I'm supposed to not know, something that changes the equation. So let's stop dancing around it. What's really happening? No point in lying. Vance would see through it, and lying would just make the situation worse." Cole took a slow breath, his hand still near his gun, but not touching it. "There are 7 bounty hunters on the ridge above us. Professional killers. They're here for the $5,000 reward on your head. They're waiting for me to fail at arresting you, and then they're going to open fire and kill all 4 of you." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. Webb and the other 2 tensed, their eyes darting to the canyon walls, searching for threats. But Vance just smiled wider, as if Cole had confirmed something he'd already suspected. 7 guns against 4, Vance said thoughtfully. "That's not fair odds." "No, it's not. So why tell me? Why warn us? You could have just let it happen, solved your problem without getting your hands dirty." "Because that's not justice. That's execution. And whatever else you are, Vance, you deserve a trial. You deserve to face your crimes in a courtroom, not get shot down like a dog by men who care more about money than law." Vance studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his crew. "Marcus, Jesse, Clayton, lower your weapons. Slowly. Don't give our friends up there a reason to start shooting early." The three men exchanged glances but obeyed, setting their rifles on the ground and stepping back. Webb looked particularly unhappy about it, his jaw clenched tight, but he followed orders without argument. "Now what?" Cole asked. "Now we talk. Really talk. No games, no deception, no philosophy. Just two old men trying to figure out how to survive a situation that wants us both dead." Vance gestured to the fire. "Get down off that horse. Have some coffee. And let's see if we can find a third option that doesn't end with all of us bleeding out in this canyon." Cole hesitated. Every instinct said this was a trap, but every instinct had been wrong about Vance from the beginning, so maybe it was time to stop trusting instincts and start trusting the evidence in front of him. He dismounted, his knee nearly buckling, and hobbled to the fire. Vance poured him coffee in a tin cup, the steam rising in the cool morning air. Cole drank, the bitter heat cutting through his exhaustion. "Your knee's bad," Vance observed. "How'd that happen?" "Horse threw me. 10 years ago. Never healed right." "And your heart?" "How did you—" "I pay attention, Marshal. When you walked down here, you were breathing hard, not from exertion, from strain. Something's wrong with your ticker. Probably been wrong for years, but you ignore it because acknowledging it would mean accepting you're not the man you used to be." Cole set down his cup. "We're not here to discuss my health. Aren't we, though? Because your health is relevant. You can't chase us, can't fight us, probably can't even survive the ride back to Salvation Creek if you push too hard. You're a dying man on a dying horse, hunting dying legends across a dying frontier. The whole situation is ridiculous. Tragic, maybe, but mostly ridiculous. You got a point, or are you just talking to hear yourself?" Vance's smile faded. "My point is this. We're all dead men here. You, me, my boys, those bounty hunters up on the ridge. We're relics. Anachronisms. The world has moved past us. So the question isn't whether we die. The question is how. Do we die shooting at each other, giving men like Reed exactly what they want, or do we die doing something that actually matters? Like robbing a train? Like surviving long enough to choose our own ends?" Cole frowned. "I don't follow. Those bounty hunters aren't just hunting me, Marshal. They're hunting you too. Maybe not literally, not yet, but what you represent. The idea that law means more than money, that justice is about truth rather than efficiency, that's dead. Reed and his kind are the future, killers with paperwork, and once they're done with me, they'll come for every other lawman who still believes badges mean something. So what are you suggesting?" Vance leaned forward, his pale eyes intense. "I'm suggesting we stop them. Together. Right now. Before they can kill us and collect their blood money." Cole stared at him. "You want me to help you fight the bounty hunters? I want us to survive the day. What happens after? The arrest, the trial, the train robbery? We can figure that out once we're not surrounded by professional killers." "That's insane. That's pragmatic. 7 men up there want us dead. 4 of us down here want to live. You're a lawman. I'm an outlaw. But right now we have a common enemy. Enemy of my enemy and all that." Webb stepped forward, his gray beard bristling. "Caleb, this is a mistake. We can't trust him. He's already betrayed us once by telling us about the bounty hunters." "He didn't betray us, Marcus. He warned us. There's a difference." Vance kept his eyes on Cole. "The marshal here is a lot of things. Stubborn, idealistic, foolishly committed to a system that doesn't work. But he's not a liar. When he says those men up there will kill us all, I believe him. And when he says he wants to bring us in alive, I believe that too. Which means our interests align. For now." "And if we survive?" Cole asked. "What then?" "Then I surrender. Peacefully. Let you take me back to Salvation Creek for trial. My boys scatter, no one follows them. The gold gets returned to the bank. Everyone goes home alive except the men who deserve to die." I'm supposed to believe you'll just give up after everything?" Vance's expression grew serious, almost sad. "Marshal, I'm 61 years old. I've been running since I was 20. Running from the law, from my past, from the man I was supposed to be. 20 years in Yuma gave me time to think about that, to realize that running doesn't change anything. It just delays the inevitable. So yes, I'll surrender. Not because I've reformed, not because I believe in your system, But because I'm tired of running, and I'd rather end this on terms I choose than have it end with Reed's bullet in my brain. Cole wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly he could taste it like copper in his mouth. But he'd wanted to believe before, and that had led to disaster. How do I know this isn't another game? You don't, but you're out of options, Marshal. You can try to arrest us now, trigger the ambush, and we all die. You can walk away, let Reed do his work, and live with the guilt. Or you can take a chance on the word of an outlaw who's got nothing to gain by lying except maybe a few more hours of life. The other two members of Vance's crew looked skeptical. The tall one, Jesse, spoke up for the first time, his voice tight with tension. "This is crazy, Caleb. We should run. Right now. Scatter in 4 directions. They can't chase all of us." "They don't need to chase all of us," Vance replied. "Just me. I'm the one with the bounty. You 3 are just bonus targets. And besides," he gestured at the canyon walls, "look at this terrain. Look at those positions. They've got the high ground, multiple angles of fire, probably at least 2 sharpshooters. We run, we die. It's that simple." Clayton, the brick wall of a man, grunted agreement. Caleb's right. Bad ground for running, good ground for dying. Cole looked around at the 4 outlaws, seeing them clearly for the first time. Not legends or villains, just men. Old men, worn down by hard choices and harder consequences. Men who'd chosen wrong at some point and then kept choosing wrong because the path back to right was blocked by pride and fear and the weight of their own histories. Men not unlike himself, really, just on the other side of a badge. 7 guns, Cole said slowly, thinking out loud, positioned on the ridge, probably spread out across 200 yards of elevation. Professional tactics. They'll want to catch us in crossfire, eliminate escape routes. Reed will take the center position. He's the leader. He'll want the primary shot. The others will flank. "So how do we counter that?" Vance asked. Cole's mind worked through the problem the way he'd worked through hundreds of tactical situations over 4 decades. "We can't take them head on. They've got position, numbers, and probably better weapons. But they have a weakness. Which is? They're not coordinated. 7 individuals working together, not a unified unit. There's no command structure beyond Reed's authority, and that's based on profit sharing, not loyalty. If we can disrupt their positioning, make them doubt each other, we might be able to turn this into a running fight instead of an execution." Vance nodded slowly. "You've thought about this before. Fighting multiple opponents with better position. I've been in situations. They didn't all end well, but I learned from the ones that did. All right, Marshal, you've got tactical experience. Marcus here knows explosives. Jesse's the best shot west of the Mississippi, and Clayton can hit like a freight train in close quarters. Between the 5 of us, maybe we've got a chance." "Maybe. Maybe not. But it's better than definitely dying." Webb stepped closer, his expression skeptical. "You're serious about this? About trusting him?" "I'm serious about surviving," Vance replied. "The Marshal can arrest me after we deal with Reed. Hell, he can shoot me himself if he wants. But right now, he's the only ally we've got." Cole finished his coffee and set down the cup. "All right, here's what we do." He outlined the plan quickly, using a stick to draw in the dirt. The canyon had 3 exits, one at the north end where the train tracks ran, one at the south where Cole had entered, and a narrow slot canyon to the east that led back into the mountains. Reed's men would be watching the north and south exits, expecting the outlaws to run that way. But the eastern slot canyon was tight and twisting, difficult to shoot into from the ridge. "We split up," Cole explained. 2 groups. Marcus and Clayton take the horses and make a show of running south, back towards Salvation Creek. They'll draw at least 3 or 4 of Reed's men that direction. The rest of us use the distraction to move east through the slot canyon. We get into the mountains, we lose them in the rock maze up there. "That leaves Marcus and Clayton exposed," Jesse pointed out, "only for a minute or 2. Once they draw the attention, they ditch the horses and take cover in the rocks. Reed's men will have to come down off the ridge to pursue, and that's when the advantage shifts. Close quarters fighting in rough terrain. Marcus's demolition skills and Clayton's strength will even the odds." "And us?" Vance asked. "The 3 who go east?" "We loop around behind Reed's main position, come at them from the direction they're not expecting, force them to fight on 2 fronts. It was a terrible plan with a dozen ways to fail, but it was something which was better than nothing." "Won't work," Reed's voice called out from above, echoing off the canyon walls. Nice try, Marshal, but I've been listening to every word, and your tactics are about 20 years out of date. Cole's heart sank. Of course Reed had been listening. Probably had a man posted close enough to hear conversations. Professional killers didn't leave details to chance. Here's what's going to happen instead, Reed continued, his voice calm and reasonable. You're going to all set down your weapons. Right now, nice and slow. Then you're going to walk to the center of the canyon with your hands visible. Anyone who doesn't comply gets shot. Starting with you, Marshal, since you seem determined to die for principles nobody believes in anymore. Cole looked at Vance. The outlaw's expression was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched tight. Around them, Webb and the others tensed, hands moving toward weapons they couldn't possibly draw fast enough. Do it, Vance said quietly. Put down the guns. Caleb, do it, Marcus. That's an order. Slowly, reluctantly, the four outlaws laid down their weapons. Rifles on the ground, pistols unbuckled and set beside them. Cole did the same, feeling naked without the weight of his Colt on his hip. Good, Reed called. Now walk, center of the canyon, all 5 of you, hands up where I can see them. They walked, their boots crunching on stone, their hands raised like prisoners. Cole's knees screamed with each step. His heart hammered irregularly, skipping beats. Beside him, Vance moved with the calm of a man who'd accepted his fate. 50 feet from their camp, 60, 70. Out in the open with no cover, completely exposed. Cole could feel the crosshairs on his back, could imagine Reed's finger tightening on the trigger. This was it. The end. Not the heroic conclusion he'd imagined, not the just resolution he'd wanted, just 7 killers executing 5 men in a canyon that nobody would remember. Far enough, Reed called. Now turn around. I want you to see this coming. They turned. Cole could see the bounty hunters now, dark figures against the morning sky, rifles trained down into the canyon. 7 men about to commit murder under the legal fiction of a bounty. Any last words? Reed asked. I'm feeling generous this morning. Cole opened his mouth, searching for something meaningful to say. Some final statement about justice or law or the meaning of a badge. But the words wouldn't come. What was there to say? That he'd tried? That he'd failed? That the world he'd believed in was dying with him? Then Vance spoke, his voice carrying clearly up to the ridge. Just one question, Reed. You ever stop to wonder why this was so easy? Why we were sitting here waiting? Why the great Caleb Vance didn't run when he had the chance? Because you're old and stupid, Reed replied. Same as the marshal. Maybe. Or maybe because we knew you were coming. Knew it yesterday. Knew it before the marshal even showed up. Reed's rifle barrel shifted slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Think about it. How did you find us so fast? How did you know exactly where we'd be? Someone told you. Someone gave you our location, our timing, everything. Vance smiled up at the ridge. Question is, who told you? And what else did they tell you? There was a pause. Cole could practically hear Reed's mind working, doubt creeping in. He's lying, one of the other bounty hunters said. It's a stall tactic. Is it? Vance's voice remained calm. Or did someone set you up? Someone who knew you'd come running for $5,000 and never questioned whether it was a trap. Someone who wanted 7 witnesses dead just as much as they wanted 4 outlaws dead. Shoot them, the bounty hunter urged. Shoot them now before... The explosion came from the south end of the canyon, a massive blast of fire and rock that shook the ground. Cole hit the dirt instinctively, covering his head as debris rained down. When he looked up, a section of the ridge had collapsed, taking at least 2 of Reed's men with it. Now, Vance shouted, already running for the slot canyon. Cole scrambled to his feet, his knee protesting, and followed. Behind him, he heard more explosions, smaller charges carefully placed. Marcus's work. The old man had been busy last night while everyone else slept. Gunfire erupted, bullets kicking up dirt around them. Cole ran, his heart hammering, his breath coming in gasps. Jesse passed him, moving with the fluid speed of a younger man. Then Clayton, carrying both rifles and somehow still faster than Cole. The slot canyon loomed ahead, narrow and dark and promising cover. Cole threw himself into it just as a bullet sparked off the rock where his head had been. He pressed against the wall, chest heaving, spots dancing in his vision. You all right? Vance asked, breathing hard but not as hard as Cole. Define all right. Still alive? Barely. Then you're all right. Vance grinned, wild and fierce. Welcome to the outlaw life, Marshal. Doesn't it feel good to stop following rules and start surviving? Cole wanted to argue, wanted to say this wasn't survival, it was chaos. Wanted to point out that they were trapped in a canyon with 5 armed killers still hunting them. But he was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. Above them, Reed's voice roared with fury. Find them! I want every one of those bastards dead. Now! The hunt was on, and for the first time in 40 years, Marshal Darius Cole was the prey. The slot canyon twisted like a snake's spine, narrow walls pressing in close enough that Cole's shoulders brushed stone on both sides. His breath echoed harsh and ragged in the confined space, mixing with the sound of boots scraping rock and the distant shouts of Reed's men searching for a way down. Every few yards, the passage turned sharply, creating natural choke points that would be death traps if the bounty hunters caught up. Vance moved ahead with surprising agility for a man of 61, his pale eyes scanning the rocks above for threats. Jesse brought up the rear, his stolen rifle ready, glancing back every few seconds to check their pursuit. Clayton had vanished somewhere in the chaos, presumably circling back toward Marcus to even the odds. 2 old outlaws against however many bounty hunters had survived the explosions. The mathematics weren't encouraging. How far does this go? Cole gasped, his knees sending jolts of pain up his leg with each step. Another 100 yards, then it opens into a box canyon, Vance replied without slowing. After that we climb, assuming your heart and my lungs hold out. You knew about the explosives, the whole surrender. It was a setup. Not a setup, a contingency. Marcus rigged charges last night while you were watching the camp. Figured we might need an exit strategy if things went bad. Didn't expect things to go this bad, but that's the frontier for you. Always worse than you plan for. They reached the end of the slot canyon and emerged into a circular bowl of stone maybe 50 yards across. Sheer walls rose on 3 sides, creating a natural amphitheater. The only way out was a steep chimney crack that led up and out to the ridgeline. 30 feet of vertical rock that would leave them completely exposed to anyone with a rifle and patience. That's your escape route. Cole stared at the crack in disbelief. You got a better idea? Die of old age in this canyon seems preferable to getting shot off that rock face. Your optimism is inspiring, Marshal. Vance approached the crack, testing handholds. Jesse, you go first. You're lightest and fastest. Get up top and provide cover. I'll go second. Then the Marshal. We move quick. We might make it. Jesse slung his rifle across his back and started climbing without hesitation, his lean frame finding purchase in crevices Cole could barely see. The young man moved like a spider, smooth and certain, pulling himself upward with practiced efficiency. Within 2 minutes, he'd reached the top and disappeared over the edge. Your turn, Vance said. I'll boost you to start. Cole looked at the crack, then at his knee, then back at Vance. I can't climb that. Not with this leg. Then you die here when Reed's men arrive, your choice. There has to be another way. There isn't. This is it, Marshal. This is where you decide if you really want to survive or if you're just going through the motions. Vance's pale eyes held no mockery, no judgment, just hard truth. I've seen a lot of men give up right before the finish line. Some of them probably should have. But you? You're too stubborn to die in a box canyon, so climb. Gunfire echoed from somewhere back in the slot canyon. Single shots, deliberate and spaced. Clayton or Marcus engaging Reed's men, buying them time. How much time Cole didn't know. Not enough, probably. Never enough. He grabbed the first handhold and pulled, his knees screaming in protest. Pain shot through his leg like fire, white-hot and all-consuming. For a moment he thought he'd black out, thought his body would simply refuse and he'd fall back to the ground, and that would be the end of it. But Vance was there, hands on Cole's back, boosting him up. Find the next grip, left side, about a foot up. There you go. Now your right foot. See that notch? Step there. They moved together, Vance guiding from below, Cole forcing his body to obey despite every nerve screaming to stop. Inch by painful inch, foot by agonizing foot, the ground fell away beneath them. Cole's hands were bleeding. His knee felt like someone had driven spikes through the joint, and his heart stuttered in his chest like a drum with a broken head. But he climbed. Halfway up, his right foot slipped. He dangled by his hands for a terrifying moment, his full weight suspended by his fingers. The world spun. His vision tunneled. This was it, the heart attack that had been waiting for him, coming right now to finish what age and hard living had started. "Don't you dare!" Vance growled from below him. "Don't you dare quit on me now! Find your footing! Move your left foot 6 inches right. There's a ledge." Cole's foot found the ledge. He pulled himself back against the rock, chest heaving, tasting copper. Below him, Vance had stopped climbing, one hand gripping stone, the other extended up as if he could catch Cole if he fell. The gesture was absurd. Both men would plummet if that happened, but somehow it steadied Cole's nerves. "Keep moving," Vance urged. "We're almost there." 3 more minutes of agony brought Cole to the top. Jesse grabbed his wrist and hauled him over the edge, where Cole collapsed on flat ground, gasping like a landed fish. The world tilted and swayed. His heart hammered arrhythmically, but he was alive. Impossibly, stubbornly alive. Vance pulled himself up moments later, breathing hard but still moving with purpose. "Jesse, watch the back trail. Anyone comes up that crack, shoot them. Marshal, can you walk?" "Give me a minute." "Don't have a minute. Reed's men will be here soon, and up here we're exposed. Need to keep moving. Find better ground." Cole forced himself upright, his legs shaking. The ridgeline stretched in both directions, offering little cover except scattered boulders and scrub brush. To the north, maybe half a mile away, he could see the railroad tracks cutting across the landscape. To the south, smoke rose from where Marcus's explosives had collapsed part of the ridge. "Marcus and Clayton?" Cole asked. "Still in the fight, from the sound of it?" Vance pointed toward the smoke. More gunfire echoed across the canyon, the report sharp and distinct. "They're holding position, drawing Reed's men away from us. Good men, best I've ridden with. They're criminals. They're survivors. Same thing at this point." Vance started moving north along the ridge, using the boulders for cover. "Come on, we need distance before Reed regroups." They moved as quickly as Cole's knee allowed, which wasn't very quick at all. Every step was agony, every breath a struggle. Behind them, Jesse followed in a crouch, his rifle sweeping their back trail. The morning sun climbed higher, turning the air into a furnace. After maybe a quarter mile, Vance called a halt in the shadow of a large boulder. Cole sank down gratefully, his back against warm stone. His canteen was empty, his ammunition was back in the canyon with his weapons. He was unarmed, injured, and stranded on a ridgeline with 2 outlaws while professional killers hunted them. The situation had moved past dangerous and into suicidal. "How many did the explosion get?" Cole asked when he could speak. 2 for certain, maybe a third. Reed's still alive. I heard him shouting orders, so that leaves at least 4, maybe 5 against the 3 of us, plus Marcus and Clayton. Still bad odds, but better than 7 against 5. Marcus planned those explosives perfectly. How did he know where to place them? Vance smiled grimly. "Because Marcus and I scouted this canyon 2 months ago. We knew we'd need an exit strategy if the train job went south. Didn't expect to need it before the job even started, but like I said, the frontier always surprises you." 2 months. You've been planning this since before you got out of prison." 20 years, Marshal. I've been planning this for 20 years. The bank job was just seed money. The train is the real score, the one that will set us up for life. Let us disappear into Mexico or South America or anywhere the law can't reach. One last perfect robbery executed by men who know every trick because we invented half of them. Cole shook his head. "There's no such thing as a perfect robbery. Someone always makes a mistake." "Not this time. We've thought of everything, every detail, every contingency, every—" Vance stopped, his expression shifting to something darker. "Except you. Didn't plan on you vouching for my release. Didn't plan on you following us. And definitely didn't plan on you warning us about Reed. That was supposed to be a clean escape, and you turned it into a running battle. Sorry to complicate your criminal enterprise." "Don't be. You probably saved our lives. Reed would have hit us at the train, killed everyone including passengers, and walked away clean. Your interference, however annoying, forced this into the open early. Gave us a fighting chance." Jesse whistled low from his position watching the back trail. "Movement. 3 men, maybe 400 yards out, coming fast." Vance crept to the edge of the boulder and peered around it. Cole joined him, his vision blurring slightly before focusing. 4 figures moved across the broken terrain, rifles ready, spread out in a skirmish line. Professional tactics. Reed's remaining men, closing in for the kill. "We can't outrun them," Jesse said flatly. "Not with the marshal's knee. And we've got 1 rifle against 4. Then we don't run." Vance checked the rifle Jesse had carried, counting rounds. 8 shots. Not great. "How are you with that thing, Jesse?" "I can shoot." "That's not what I asked." "I can hit a man at 400 yards, 500 if I take my time." Vance handed him the rifle. "Then find a good spot and slow them down. Don't try to kill them, just make them cautious. Buy us time to think." Jesse nodded and moved to a higher position behind another boulder, settling in with the rifle braced. He sighted carefully, adjusting for wind and distance, then fired. The report echoed across the ridge. 400 yards away, one of the bounty hunters dove for cover, though Cole couldn't tell if he'd been hit or just spooked. "Good shot," Vance muttered. "Do it again." Jesse worked the bolt, chambered another round, and fired. This time, Cole saw the result, a puff of dust near another bounty hunter's feet. The man scrambled backward, seeking cover behind rocks. The skirmish line broke apart as the 4 men went to ground, their advance halted. 7 shots left, Jesse reported. "After that, we're throwing rocks." Cole's mind raced through options. They couldn't stay here. Reed's men would eventually flank their position or simply wait for reinforcements. They couldn't run, not fast enough to escape. They couldn't fight, not with 1 rifle and 7 rounds against 4 professional killers with unlimited ammunition. Every path led to the same place, dead in the desert, forgotten by everyone except maybe the vultures, unless they changed the game entirely. "The train," Cole said suddenly. "When's it due through Devil's Bend?" Vance frowned. "Tomorrow morning." "Why?" "Because Reed wants us dead before the train arrives. That's his timetable. Kill the outlaws, collect the reward, be long gone before witnesses show up. But if we can survive until the train comes through, we've got leverage. Passengers. Witnesses. People Reed can't just massacre without consequences. You want to use innocent people as shields. I want to keep innocent people safe while keeping us alive. There's a difference." Cole's voice was stronger now, the plan forming even as he spoke. "We get to the tracks before Reed does. Flag down the train. Get aboard with the passengers. Reed won't risk a massacre with that many witnesses. It would bring every lawman in the territory down on him. He'll have to back off. And then what? We ride the train to the next town with you as our hostage? Then we figure out the next step. But first we have to survive the next 12 hours. Jesse fired again, the rifle crack making Cole's ears ring. 6 shots. They're trying to circle around to the east, using that low ground. "How far to the tracks?" Cole asked. Vance studied the terrain. 1/2 mile, maybe less, but it's open ground most of the way. They'll see us coming. Not if someone stays here, keeps them pinned down with the rifle while the other 2 run for it. That's suicide for whoever stays. Maybe, maybe not. 6 shots, used right, could keep 4 men cautious for 10, 15 minutes, long enough for 2 people to reach the tracks and find cover. Vance met Cole's eyes, understanding dawning. "You're volunteering to stay." "I'm the slowest, the most injured. I'll just slow you down on the run. But I can shoot, and I can buy you time. Marshal, if you stay here, you die. Reed's men will overwhelm this position the moment that rifle runs dry." "Then I better make those 6 shots count." Jesse glanced back at them. "I'll stay. I'm the best shot. Makes more sense." "No," Cole said firmly. "You're young. You've got years ahead of you, maybe even a chance to walk away from this life and do something better. I'm 63 with a bad heart and a worse knee. My years are behind me. This is the only thing left I can do that matters." "Nothing about dying alone on a ridge matters," Vance said, his voice hard. "Nothing noble about it. You're not saving us. You're just giving up." "I'm buying time. That's what I've been doing my whole career, buying time for other people to escape, to live, to find better paths than the one I chose. One more time won't make a difference to me, but it might make all the difference to you." Another shot from Jesse's rifle. 5 rounds. They're getting impatient, starting to push harder. Vance grabbed Cole's shoulder, his grip tight. "Listen to me. You don't owe us this. You don't owe me anything except a pair of handcuffs and a cell. Don't throw your life away for outlaws who've done nothing but use you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it's right. Because someone has to make a stand somewhere, even if it's just one old man on one forgotten ridge. Cole pulled away from Vance's grip. Now go. Get to those tracks. Stop Reed from killing more people. And when this is over, turn yourself in. Honor the promise you made down in that canyon. Marshal, that's an order. Now move. For a long moment, Vance just stared at him. Then something shifted in those pale eyes. Something that might have been respect or regret, or simple recognition of one stubborn old man seeing himself reflected in another. Jesse, let's go, Vance said quietly. Give the marshal the rifle. Jesse looked between them, clearly wanting to argue, but handed over the rifle and 5 remaining rounds. Cole took it, the weapon heavy and unfamiliar in his hands. He'd always preferred his Colt. Rifles were for distance work, for men who wanted to kill without looking their targets in the eye. But beggars couldn't choose their weapons. 5 shots, Jesse said. Take your time. Make them scared, not dead. Scared men move slow. Got it. Vance and Jesse moved to the north edge of the boulder, preparing to run. Vance paused, looking back one last time. For what it's worth, Marshal, you were right about second chances. Some men can change. Just took me 20 years to figure out how. Then they were running, 2 figures sprinting across open ground toward the railroad tracks half a mile away. Cole watched them go for just a moment, then turned his attention to the bounty hunters creeping toward his position. 4 men against 1 with 5 bullets and a miracle. He'd faced worse odds. Barely. A long time ago. Cole settled into a comfortable shooting position. The rifle braced against the boulder. His knee throbbed, his heart stuttered. His hands shook slightly from exhaustion and adrenaline, but his eyes were still good, and muscle memory from 40 years of law work guided his movements. The bounty hunters were maybe 300 yards out now, using the terrain well, advancing in short rushes from cover to cover. Professional work. These weren't amateurs playing at violence. They were men who'd made killing their career and gotten good at it. Cole sighted on the nearest figure and fired. The rifle kicked against his shoulder, the report rolling across the ridge like thunder. 300 yards away, the bounty hunter jerked and fell. Hit, or just diving for cover, Cole couldn't tell. Didn't matter. The advance stopped again. 4 bullets left. He shifted position slightly, finding a different angle. The bounty hunters would expect him to stay in the same spot, would plan their next move based on that assumption. But Cole hadn't survived 40 years by being predictable. Minutes crawled by. The sun climbed higher, baking the rocks until they radiated heat like an oven. Cole's mouth was dry as sand. His vision swam occasionally, black spots dancing at the edges. The heart attack was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. Maybe it would get him before Reed's men did. That would be almost funny, dying of natural causes in the middle of a gunfight. Movement to the east, one of the bounty hunters trying to flank wide, using a depression in the ground for cover. Smart move. Cole waited until the man committed to the rush, then fired. The bullet kicked up dirt 5 feet short, but the bounty hunter dove flat and didn't move for a long time. 3 bullets. To the north, Cole could just make out 2 distant figures reaching the railroad tracks. Vance and Jesse, taking cover in the rocks near the bend. They'd made it. Now they just had to survive until the train arrived tomorrow morning. Assuming Cole could keep Reed's men pinned here long enough. Another rush. This time from 2 directions at once. Coordinated assault. Cole fired twice in rapid succession, working the bolt fast, not aiming for kills, just disruption. Both bounty hunters hit the dirt. One of them returned fire. Bullets sparking off the boulder near Cole's head, chips of stone stinging his face. 1 bullet left. And 4 men still in the fight, getting braver now that they knew he was almost out of ammunition. Cole pulled back behind the boulder, breathing hard. 1 shot. He could use it now, try for 1 more scare. Or he could save it, make them wonder if he still had rounds. Uncertainty was a weapon too. Men who didn't know if they'd be shot moved differently than men who knew the gun was empty. He decided to wait. Let them think, let them plan, let them make the mistake of caution. The sun continued its climb. Sweat dripped down Cole's face, mixing with blood from the stone chips. His knee had gone from pain to a kind of numb throbbing that was almost worse, and his heart, His heart felt like it was beating too fast and too slow at the same time, like it couldn't decide whether to keep going or just give up. "Marshal!" Reed's voice carried across the distance, surprisingly close, maybe 200 yards now. "You're out of ammunition, or close enough it doesn't matter. Walk away now and I'll let you live. My quarrel's with Vance, not you." Cole didn't respond. Talking gave away position and strength. Silence was its own message. "You're dying," Reed continued. "I can hear it in your breathing from here. Heart's failing, knees destroyed. You're bleeding and exhausted and alone. What are you even fighting for? Vance is gone. His men are scattered. The gold's lost. You've got nothing left to protect." Still, Cole said nothing. He shifted position again, moving 20 feet to another boulder. The movement sent lightning through his knee, but it was necessary. Reed was trying to fix his position with conversation, would be planning his final rush based on where he thought Cole was hiding. "Last chance, Marshal. Throw down that rifle and walk away. Live to see another sunset, or stay there and die for a principle that nobody remembers anymore." Cole thought about responding, thought about explaining that principles were exactly what made a man worth remembering, that justice wasn't about convenience or profit. It was about standing between the innocent and those who'd hurt them, no matter the cost. That 40 years of wearing a badge meant something, even if the world had moved on without him. But Reed wouldn't understand. Men like Reed never did. So Cole saved his breath and kept his silence and waited for the rush he knew was coming. It came from 3 directions at once. Reed had split his force, using the terrain and their numbers to create a kill box. They moved fast, rifles up, converging on the boulder where they thought Cole was positioned. Professional execution. If he'd still been there, he'd be dead. But he wasn't there. He was 20 feet away, rifle raised, last bullet chambered. He could shoot one, maybe wound another if he was lucky. But 3 armed men at close range, he'd never survive it. This was the end, the last moment. Time to decide what that moment meant. Cole stood up from behind his boulder, fully exposed, rifle aimed at Reed's chest. The 3 bounty hunters froze, seeing him, adjusting their aim. For a brief instant, everyone was still. "You want me?" Cole called out. "Come get me. But know that the first one who moves gets this last bullet, and I don't miss at this range." Reed's scar twisted as he smiled. "That's 1 bullet against 3 rifles. Bad mathematics." "Maybe, but you'll still be dead. Is $5,000 worth dying for? Is a lost cause worth dying for?" Every time. They stood there in the burning sun. 4 old men playing at violence, all of them knowing how this ended, but none of them wanting to be the first to pull the trigger. In the distance, Cole could hear something that might have been thunder, or might have been more explosions, or might have been nothing at all, just his dying heart playing tricks on him. "Your call, Reed," Cole said quietly. "But make it soon. I'm getting tired of standing." Reed's finger tightened on his trigger. The other 2 bounty hunters adjusted their aim. Cole kept his rifle steady on Reed's center mass, knowing that even if he got the shot off, the other 2 would cut him down before he could work the bolt. This was it. The moment. The end of 40 years of law work, concluded in a standoff on a nameless ridge, with no witnesses and no glory. Just death, ugly and meaningless and final. And somehow, impossibly, Cole was at peace with it. Then the world exploded behind Reed's men, and everything went to hell. The blast came from behind Reed's position, a roar of fire and percussion that threw 2 of the bounty hunters forward like rag dolls. Marcus Webb emerged from the smoke, his gray beard singed black, a shotgun in his hands and murder in his eyes. Behind him came Clayton, moving with the inexorable momentum of an avalanche, a knife glinting in each massive fist. Reed spun, his rifle tracking toward the new threat, but Cole was already moving. His last bullet caught Reed in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. The bounty hunter's rifle clattered across the rocks as he fell, clutching his wound. The 3rd bounty hunter turned, trying to acquire targets in multiple directions, his face showing the panic of a man who'd just realized his ambush had become someone else's trap. Clayton reached him first. The knife work was brutal and efficient, honed by years of close-quarters fighting in mining camps and back alleys. The bounty hunter went down without a sound, his rifle falling from nerveless fingers. Cole collapsed behind the boulder, his rifle empty, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might simply explode. Black spots swarmed his vision. The world tilted and spun. This was it, the heart attack finally arriving to collect what his body had been promising for years. But then Marcus was there, his weathered face swimming into focus. "Stay with me, Marshal. You ain't dying on my watch. Not after buying us time like that." The old outlaw pressed a canteen to Cole's lips, and water, warm and metallic but wet, flooded his mouth. "Vance," Cole managed to gasp. "Jesse, the tracks." "They're fine. Made it to cover. Train's not due till morning, so they're dug in and waiting." Marcus glanced toward where Reed lay bleeding. "This one's still alive. Want me to finish him?" Cole shook his head, the movement making the world swim worse. "No. No more killing. We're done with that. He'd have killed you." "But he didn't, and we're not him." Clayton joined them, wiping his knives on his pants with mechanical precision. Up close, he was even bigger than Cole had thought, 6.5 feet of solid muscle and scar tissue. His voice, when he spoke, was surprisingly soft. "Other 2 are dead from the blast. This makes 6 of the 7. Where's the last one?" "Ran," Marcus said with contempt. "Soon as the shooting started, he broke south, probably halfway to Mexico by now." "Let him run," Cole said. "Let him tell people what happens when you hunt old men who know all the tricks." He tried to stand, but his knee gave out immediately. Clayton caught him with one huge hand, steadying him like he weighed nothing. "Easy, Lawman. You did your part. Rest now." But Cole couldn't rest. Not yet. Not while there were still loose ends, still questions that needed answers. "Reed, bring him here." Marcus dragged the wounded bounty hunter over. Reed's face was pale with blood loss and shock, but his eyes still held that calculating coldness. "You got lucky, old man." "Lucky?" Cole almost laughed. "I've been shot at, nearly had a heart attack, climbed a cliff that should have killed me, and I'm currently being kept upright by an outlaw who could snap my spine like a twig. That's not luck. That's just refusing to die out of pure stubbornness. Should have let me kill you clean. Would have been kinder." "Maybe. But kind isn't the same as just." Cole leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to live because I'm not a murderer, and these men, despite everything, aren't murderers either. You're going to ride back to whatever town will take you and get that shoulder patched up. And then you're going to tell everyone who'll listen that bounty hunting's a dangerous profession, that old wolves still have teeth, that trying to collect blood money from men who've survived this long is a fool's game. You think anyone will care? You think this changes anything? No, but maybe the next young fool thinking about bounty hunting will hear the story and decide to find honest work instead." Cole paused. "Or maybe not. Either way, you're done. Your crew's scattered or dead. Your reputation's shot. And you're going home with nothing to show for it, except a bullet wound and a lesson about underestimating your prey." Reed's laugh was bitter. "Some lesson. Cost me everything. Should have learned it cheaper." Cole nodded to Marcus. "Patch him up enough he won't bleed out. Give him a horse, then cut him loose." "Marshal, that's a mistake. He'll come back with more men, more guns. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. But right now, I'm making a choice. The same choice I wanted Vance to have. A chance to walk away and be something different." Cole met Reed's eyes. "What you do with that chance is your business, but you're getting it, whether you deserve it or not." Marcus muttered something uncomplimentary but pulled out medical supplies and went to work on Reed's shoulder. Clayton helped Cole to his feet, or rather, helped him remain vertical while his knee screamed and his heart did irregular things in his chest. "Can you walk?" Clayton asked. "Define walk." "Move forward without dying?" "Then no, but I can hobble with help." They made their way north along the ridge. Moving slowly, Cole supported between Clayton and Marcus. Behind them, Reed sat alone with his wound and his choices, a broken man trying to figure out what came after failure. Cole didn't look back. Looking back was how you missed what was coming ahead. It took them an hour to reach the railroad tracks, an hour of agony and determination, and several moments where Cole was certain his heart would simply stop. But it didn't stop. It kept beating, irregular and strained but functional, carrying him forward one painful step at a time. Vance and Jesse had taken position in a natural fortress of broken boulders near where the tracks curved around the gorge. Devil's Bend, they called it, and Cole could see why. The river that had carved the gorge was long dried up, leaving only a deep scar in the earth. The tracks followed the rim, forcing trains to slow to a crawl as they navigated the curve. Perfect place for a robbery. Perfect place for a last stand. Vance looked up as they approached, his pale eyes widening. "You're alive. Didn't think—" He stopped, shook his head. "Thought we'd be collecting your body when this was over. Takes more than bounty hunters and bad odds to kill me. Takes a doctor and paperwork." "Reed? Alive, wounded, sent home with a story to tell." Cole sank down against a boulder, his whole body trembling with exhaustion. "The others are dead or scattered. It's over." "Except for the train," Vance said quietly. And there it was, the last piece. The reason they'd all come to this place, the final crime that would either crown Vance's legend or end it permanently. "The train," Cole repeated. "Due through here tomorrow morning." "That's right. Carrying payroll for 3 mines and a gold shipment from the refinery. $500,000, give or take. Enough to set us up for life in any country that doesn't extradite. Or enough to get you hanged if you go through with it." Vance studied him for a long moment. "You really think I should walk away? After everything? After 20 years of planning and 2 days of hell getting here?" "I think you should keep the promise you made. The one about surrendering when this was over." "That promise was conditional on surviving. We survived. But the job's not done." Cole felt something cold settle in his chest, and it wasn't the heart attack. It was disappointment. Bone-deep, soul-weary disappointment that after everything, the warnings, the alliance, the shared fight for survival, Vance was still going to choose crime, still going to choose the legend over the life. "So that's it," Cole said flatly. "All that talk about being tired of running, about going out on your own terms, it was just more lies, more manipulation. You used me to survive Reed, and now you're going back to being exactly what you always were." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Cole's voice rose, anger cutting through exhaustion. "Fair would have been you rotting in Yuma for the full 25 years. Fair would have been me never vouching for you, never believing your act. Fair would have been Reed putting a bullet in your head before any of this started. But I gave you chances, Vance. Multiple chances to be something other than a legend and a wanted poster. And you're throwing every single one away for money you'll never get to spend because every lawman west of the Mississippi will be hunting you. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're addicted to it. The thrill, the danger, the idea that you're special, that you're the legendary Caleb Vance who can pull off the impossible. But you're not special. You're just old and stupid and so caught up in your own mythology, you can't see that the story ended 20 years ago. This?" Cole gestured at the tracks, the gorge, the whole setup. "This is just a corpse refusing to admit it's dead." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus and Clayton wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Jesse stared at the ground. Vance's face had gone still and cold, that mask he wore when emotions got too complicated. "You finished?" Vance asked finally. "Yeah, I'm finished. With this. With you. With all of it. I can't stop you from robbing that train. I'm too tired, too hurt, too old. But I won't help you either. Won't give you my blessing or my understanding or anything else you're fishing for. You want to throw away the second chance I gave you? Fine. Do it. But do it knowing you disappointed the only lawman who ever believed you could change." Cole closed his eyes, suddenly too exhausted to care anymore. His heart stuttered in his chest. His knee throbbed. Every part of him hurt, and the hurt went deeper than just physical. He'd tried. He'd really tried to believe that redemption was real, that men could change, that the system he'd served for 40 years meant something. And he'd failed, just like he'd failed at everything else that mattered. The sound of footsteps made him open his eyes. Vance stood over him, face unreadable in the shadows. For a moment, Cole thought the outlaw might shoot him, might end this whole mess with a bullet and be done with it. Instead, Vance sat down beside him, his movements slow and deliberate. "You're right," Vance said quietly. "About all of it. The addiction. The mythology. The refusal to let the story end. You're right, and I've known it for years. Maybe since the moment they locked me in Yuma and I realized I'd wasted my entire life chasing something that didn't exist." "Then why—" "Because letting go is harder than holding on. Because admitting the story's over means admitting I wasted 50 years. Because—" Vance paused, his voice catching. "Because if I'm not the legendary Caleb Vance, then Who am I? Just another old man with nothing but regrets and prison memories? Cole turned to look at him. Really look at him. And for the first time, he saw past the legend and the lies and the pale, calculating eyes. He saw a man, just a man, tired and scared and trying desperately to figure out who he was when the costume came off. You're whoever you choose to be, Cole said. That's what second chances mean. You get to write a new story. Won't be as exciting as the old one. Won't get you into any history books. But it'll be yours. And it'll be real. And the train? Let it pass. Let it carry its gold to wherever gold goes. Find something else to live for besides the next score. Vance was quiet for a long time, staring at the tracks. The sun had started its descent, painting the gorge in shades of amber and shadow. In the distance, a hawk circled, riding thermals, free and unburdened by past or future. I wanted this to mean something, Vance said finally. Wanted to prove that old men could still be dangerous, still be relevant, that we weren't just relics waiting to die. You proved it. You survived Reed, survived the desert, survived your own worst instincts long enough to see another sunset. That's meaning enough for men like us. Is it? It has to be. More silence. Then Vance stood, his decision made. He walked to the center of their small camp where Marcus and Jesse and Clayton watched with wary eyes. Change of plans, Vance announced. No train robbery, no gold, no last hurrah. Marcus's jaw dropped. What? Caleb, we've planned this for 20 years. I know. I was there for every minute of it. But the plans changed. We're done. All of us. The hell we are? Jesse's voice cracked with disbelief. That train's carrying $500,000. We're just going to let it roll past? That's exactly what we're going to do. Vance's voice was firm. Because the marshal's right. We're chasing a ghost. A story that ended 2 decades ago. And if we hit that train, we're not legends. We're just old men robbing people who work for their money while we steal it. That's not legacy. That's just sad. Clayton spoke up, his soft voice cutting through the tension. So what do we do instead? We scatter, disappear, find new lives in places where nobody knows our names. The gold we took from Salvation Creek, we split it 4 ways. That's enough to start over somewhere quiet, somewhere the law won't come looking. And him? Marcus pointed at Cole. The lawman who hunted us? He just gets to walk away? No, Vance said. He gets to arrest me, like I promised. I surrender to Marshal Cole's custody. The rest of you, you run, fast and far. Don't look back. Don't contact me. Just disappear and make something better than this. The 3 outlaws stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Maybe they all had, somewhere in the chaos and violence and desperate choices of the past 2 days. But Cole could see the truth in Vance's eyes. The outlaw meant it. The story was over. You're serious, Marcus said slowly. After everything, you're just giving up. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing. For maybe the first time in my life, I'm making a choice that isn't about pride or legend or proving something to people who don't care. I'm choosing to end this before more people die. Vance looked at Cole. If you'll still have me. Cole struggled to his feet, Clayton helping him up. His knee screamed, his heart protested. But his voice was steady when he spoke. I'll take you back to Salvation Creek. There'll be a trial, a real one. You'll probably do more time considering you escaped custody and robbed that bank. But it'll be legal, proper, the way things should be. And my crew? Cole looked at the 3 outlaws, Marcus with his explosives expertise and gray beard, Jesse with his sharpshooter's eyes and young face, Clayton with his massive frame and soft voice. Men who'd survived the frontier through violence and cunning, men who deserved to be arrested, tried, probably hanged, but also men who'd saved his life, who'd fought beside him against a common enemy, who'd chosen to listen when their leader made the hard choice to surrender. I've got no warrant for them, Cole said carefully. No witnesses to their crimes except me, and my testimony won't hold up against a good lawyer. As far as I'm concerned, I was chasing Caleb Vance. These 3 are just men I met on the trail. Men who helped an old lawman survive bounty hunters. Men who've earned a chance to disappear. Marcus's eyes widened. You're letting us go. I'm acknowledging reality. I can't chase all of you. Can barely walk, much less track 3 men across open country. So yes, take your share of the gold. Ride out. Don't rob any more banks, and if I ever see you again, I'll arrest you on sight. But today? Today you're free." The three outlaws exchanged glances, uncertainty and hope warring on their faces. Then Marcus stepped forward and stuck out his hand. "You're a strange kind of lawman, Cole, but you're a good one. Don't let anyone tell you different." Cole shook his hand, then Jesse's, then Clayton's massive paw. These might be the last outlaws he'd ever meet. The last remnants of a frontier that was dying around them. Seemed right to part on good terms. They left at sunset, three figures on horseback riding into the amber light, headed for new lives or new crimes or whatever waited for men trying to escape their pasts. Cole watched them go until they were just dark specks against the horizon, then sat down heavily on a boulder. "Just us now," Vance said, settling beside him. "You and me and a long ride back to civilization. You could run. I can't stop you." "I know, but I gave my word. And maybe it's time I learned what keeping a promise feels like." They made camp near the tracks that night, building a small fire for warmth more than light. Cole's medical knowledge was rough but functional. He checked Vance for injuries, finding only bruises and scrapes. The outlaw checked him in return, his face growing increasingly concerned. "Your heart's not good, Marshal. Can you even make the ride back?" "I'll manage. Made it this far on spite and stubbornness. Figure that'll carry me a few more miles." "What happens after? After the trial, I mean. What happens to you?" Cole stared into the flames. "I retire. For real this time. Hand in the badge, move to that ranch, spend whatever time I have left watching horses graze and sunsets fade. Maybe read some books. Maybe just sit and remember what it felt like to believe the world made sense." "You did good work, Marshal. Don't let this mess make you think different." "Did I? I vouched for a criminal who robbed a bank 8 hours later. Nearly got my deputy killed. Led bounty hunters to men they'd have never found otherwise. And I'm bringing in one outlaw while letting 3 others escape. That's not good work. That's just survival disguised as justice." "Maybe survival is justice. Maybe keeping people alive, even the wrong people, is the highest justice there is." Vance poked the fire with a stick. "You gave me chances I didn't deserve. Some I took, some I wasted, but you gave them. That counts for something." "Does it?" "Has to. Otherwise we're all just animals pretending to be civilized." The fire crackled. The stars came out, bright and cold and infinite. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang its lonely song. Cole's heart beat its irregular rhythm, and he wondered how many more beats it had left. How many more sunsets. How many more moments of clarity before the darkness took him. But tonight, right now, he was alive. Tired and hurt and disappointed, but alive. And sitting next to him was a legendary outlaw who'd chosen surrender over glory. That had to mean something, had to count for something in the cosmic ledger of right and wrong. "We should sleep," Cole said. "Long ride tomorrow." "Marshal, thank you for believing I could change, even when I didn't believe it myself." Cole nodded, too tired for words. They slept in shifts, taking turns watching the darkness, 2 old men waiting for morning and whatever it would bring. The train came through at dawn, exactly on schedule. They heard it first, the distant whistle echoing across the gorge, then the rhythmic chug of the engine, then the squeal of brakes as it slowed for Devil's Bend. Cole and Vance stood by the tracks, watching it pass. The engineer waved, passengers looked out windows. The gold car rolled by, heavy and secure, carrying its fortune to wherever fortunes went. Then it was gone, disappearing around the bend, leaving only smoke and the smell of coal and the fading sound of wheels on rails. "Could have been ours," Vance said quietly. "Could have been, but it's not. And that's okay." They flagged down the next westbound train 2 days later, an old freight hauler that agreed to take them to the nearest town with a telegraph. From there, Cole wired Sheriff Morgan in Salvation Creek, arranged for transport, and officially placed Caleb Vance under arrest. The trial came 3 weeks later, held in the territorial courthouse with Judge Harrison presiding. It lasted 2 days. The verdict was guilty on all counts: bank robbery, escape from custody, assault on a peace officer. The sentence was 15 years in Yuma Territorial Prison, to be served in full with no possibility of early release. Vance took it without complaint, standing straight as the judge read the sentence. When the bailiffs came to lead him away, he caught Cole's eye and nodded once. A gesture of respect, of understanding, of two men who'd found something like honor in the chaos. Cole didn't attend the prisoner transport, couldn't bear to watch Vance being loaded onto the same wagon that had carried him to freedom such a short time ago. Instead, he turned in his badge to Sheriff Morgan, signed the retirement papers, and rode out to his ranch before anyone could throw him a party or make speeches about his 40 years of service. The ranch was small but peaceful. 30 acres of decent grazing land, a creek that ran year-round, a cabin that needed work but was sound where it counted. Cole spent his first week there doing nothing but sitting on the porch and watching the world go by. Deputy Wade visited on the 8th day, his head still bandaged but his spirits high. "How are you adjusting, sir?" "Still breathing. That's about all I'm qualified to do these days." "I heard about the trial, about Vance getting 15 years. That's something, at least." "Something," Cole agreed. "Not justice exactly, but close enough." "What happened out there? In the desert?" Nobody's quite sure of the story. Cole thought about it, the explosions and the gunfights, and the impossible alliance with the men he was supposed to arrest. The bounty hunters and the train that never got robbed and the moment when Vance chose surrender over legend. All of it too complicated to explain, too messy to fit into the simple narratives people wanted. "What happened is we all survived," Cole said finally. "That's the story. No heroes, no villains, just people trying not to die and mostly succeeding." "That's it? That's everything?" Wade lingered a moment longer, then left. Cole returned to his porch, sitting, watching the sun track across the sky and feeling his heart do its irregular dance in his chest. The doctor in Salvation Creek had told him he had maybe a year, maybe less. Heart damage too severe to repair, just had to wait for the inevitable moment when it decided to stop. But he'd made peace with that. Made peace with a lot of things, actually. The failures and the compromises and all the times justice had been imperfect or absent entirely. You did the best you could with what you had, and sometimes that wasn't enough, and you learned to live with it or you ate your gun. Cole had never been the gun-eating type. 3 months later, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was distinctive. Cole opened it on his porch, the paper crackling in the dry air. "Marshal," it read. "They're treating me fair in here. Better than last time, actually. Might be because I'm older, or might be because I'm not planning to escape. Hard to say. I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing who you are, about second chances meaning you get to write a new story. I think I'm starting to understand. Won't be a good story, probably. 15 years in a cell doesn't make for exciting reading. But it'll be honest. And maybe that's worth more than exciting. You gave me something no one else ever did, a chance to choose. I didn't take it the first time. Took it the second. That has to count for something. Thanks for that. For believing when you shouldn't have. For giving chances I didn't deserve. For being the kind of lawman who made me want to be better than I was. Hope your heart holds out. Hope you get to see a lot more sunsets from that porch. And if this is goodbye, well, it's been an honor knowing you, Marshal Darius Cole, even when I was lying to you, especially when you saw through the lies and gave me chances anyway." Respectfully, C.V. Cole read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that defied description. His heart beat its unsteady rhythm. His knee throbbed. His hands shook slightly, though whether from age or emotion he couldn't say. But he was alive, still here, still watching the day fade into night and knowing that tomorrow would bring another dawn. And somewhere in Yuma Territorial Prison, a legendary outlaw was learning to be just a man. Learning that honor came in small choices as much as grand gestures. Learning that the story didn't have to end with glory to matter. That was justice. Not the kind you found in law books or courtrooms. The kind you found in human hearts making hard choices and living with the consequences. Imperfect and messy and real. Cole smiled and watched the sun disappear below the horizon, taking the day with it. Another one survived. Another small victory against the dying of the light. And if his heart gave out tomorrow, if this sunset was his last, at least he'd die knowing he'd tried. Had given a damn when it would have been easier not to. Had stood between the innocent and those who'd harmed them. Had believed in redemption even when it failed. Had kept his badge clean even when the world around him turned dirty. That would have to be enough. And somehow, sitting there on his porch with Vance's letter in his pocket and the stars coming out overhead, it was. The frontier was dying. The legends were fading. But the men who'd lived those legends, the outlaws and lawmen, the dreamers and survivors, they'd left something behind. Not monuments or statues, just stories. Small moments of honor in a harsh world. Choices made in impossible situations. Mercy given when vengeance would have been easier. And maybe that was the only legacy worth having. Not to be remembered as a hero or villain, but as someone who'd tried, who'd cared, who'd believed that even in the darkest moments, there was still a choice between right and wrong, and that choice mattered. Marshal Darius Cole died 8 months later, in his sleep, on his porch under a sky full of stars. They found him the next morning, his face peaceful, his hand resting over his heart. In his pocket was a letter from Yuma Territorial Prison, creased from multiple readings. They buried him on his ranch under a simple headstone that read, Darius Cole, Lawman. He tried. And in a cell in Yuma, when news of the marshal's death reached him, Caleb Vance sat quietly for a long time. Then he picked up his pencil and wrote a letter that would never be sent because there was no one left to send it to. But he wrote it anyway because some things needed to be said even if nobody would hear them. You were right, Marshal, about everything. The story's over, the legend's done, and I'm just a man now, serving time I earned, trying to figure out who I am when the mask comes off. It's harder than I thought, but I'm trying. For you. For the chance you gave me. For the belief that men can change if they want it badly enough. Thank you for that gift. Thank you for seeing past the legend to the man underneath. Thank you for being the kind of lawman that made outlaws like me wish we'd chosen different paths. Rest well, old friend. You earned it. And I'll keep earning the chance you gave me, one day at a time, until they open these gates and I walk out a free man. Not free from consequences, but free from the story I was telling myself. That's the real freedom. That's what you taught me. And I won't forget it. He folded the letter and put it away with the others he'd written over the months. Then he returned to the book he'd been reading, a history of the frontier that was already turning them all into myths. But Caleb Vance knew the truth, knew that behind every legend was just a person, flawed and frightened, and trying to make sense of a senseless world, knew that heroism was often just stubbornness, and villainy was often just bad choices compounded by pride. And he knew that somewhere, on a small ranch in Arizona, under stars that didn't care about human stories, a good man rested. A man who'd given him something more valuable than freedom, a chance to choose who he wanted to be, and the belief that the choice mattered. That was Marshal Darius Cole's legacy, not the arrests or the gunfights or the 40 years of service, just that simple, stubborn belief that people could change, that mercy mattered, that doing the right thing, even when it cost you everything, was worth it. The frontier died, the legends faded, but that belief survived, carried forward by the men who'd learned it from a tired old lawman who refused to quit. And in the end, maybe that was justice after all.